Hello again, YouTube family. It's been about a week since I was last on here, and going back to work tomorrow, so I figured I'd do a couple of videos today just discussing what's been in the news, and let's get at it. Again, if you like these videos, please hit the like button. If you've not subscribed and you enjoy the videos, please subscribe for the videos. And you can ring the bell for notifications. And this video is going to deal with H.R. 1, which is the For the People Act, which is just the name of the bill and the title of it given by the lawmakers. It's a Democrat bill, and it's designed to expand voting, to try and get more people involved, try and get more people voting. And Mitch McConnell states that he stated that states are not engaged in efforts to suppress voters whatsoever, which is just a lie. As I said in a previous video, there are nearly 300 bills in Republican states across the country that are trying to curtail voting access, to try and make it more difficult to vote, to put more hurdles in front of voters, to try and get fewer people at the polls voting. This bill tries to expand voting eligibility because you have two different vehicles at work here. You have the Republican Party, which is depending on fewer people voting, and the Democrat Party, which is hoping to get more people voting. Fewer votes, better for Republicans, and more votes, better for Democrats. And it's clear that this bill will not pass without altering or perhaps eliminating the filibuster. I still need to do a filibuster video sometime here in the near future. But Republicans are in no way, shape, or form going to support or allow this bill to pass. Will not happen. There may be some provisions within this bill you could get Republicans to vote for. And honestly, at the point they're at right now, if Democrats wanted to get some provisions passed, what they could do is negotiate, okay, let's sit down and take this bill apart, and you come up with a list of provisions in this bill your people are willing to vote for. That is, talking to the Republicans. You could have Chuck Schumer sit down with Mitch McConnell and say, okay, come up with a list of provisions within this bill your party is willing to vote for, and see if they come up with any. And the crux of the issue is how H.R. 1 expands voter access. It would require states to allow no excuse absentee voting. That is, if you wanted to vote by absentee, if you wanted to mail your ballot in every year, you could just request a mail-in ballot every year. And that way you don't have to go stand in line at the polls. That don't have to take time from work, things like that. Limit use of voter ID laws. Voter ID laws are the new era Jim Crow kind of thing. It's trying to limit the number of people of color at the polls, people who don't have, say, driver's licenses, tend to be Hispanic, black or Latin descent, and it's aimed at preventing partisan gerrymandering. That would be to have a nonpartisan group divide up states. That way, districts are divided however they're divided, and it's not taken into consideration who's voting for whom. And that's one of the problems you have. A lot of people have complained about with this country. Its current setup is you've had so much gerrymandering, and the Democrats have done it, but it's not a two sides issue. They have not done it anywhere to the degree Republicans have. I mean, there was a judge back in, I don't know if it was 2014 or 2016, that had called out the Republicans' gerrymandering and said it was insane how precise it was at cutting out Democrat voters from districts. It disallows dark money into political donations. Not that it necessarily disallows them, it just doesn't allow them to be anonymous anymore. Right now, you've got a setup where, because of Citizens United, a bill that passed a long time ago, it was upheld by the Constitution, saying that corporations are people and corporations' money equals speech. Therefore, you can't curtail corporate donations into political campaigns, or else you're curtailing their freedom of speech. It's nonsense, but it's still legal right now. And as it is, corporations can pour tons of money into political campaigns and not be identified as this corporation, that corporation, whoever's donating to this person, that person. This makes it where it has to be out in the open. It has to be publicly acknowledged through the election, the Federal Election Commission. It tightens government ethics rules. There is unified Republican opposition, without a doubt. And they believe the bill would weaken election security. That's the buzzword Republicans have been using with relation to everything election. Is we're not trying to keep black people from voting or Hispanic people from voting or women from voting. What we're trying to do is make it more secure, because if we eliminate Sunday voting, it's more secure somehow. If we cut the hours that you're able to go to the polls and vote by 1 hour at night and 1 hour in the morning, it's more secure somehow. That's their argument, is that it's more secure by these ridiculous measures they're taking. There is no indication of any widespread voter fraud anywhere in the country, and no one can point to it. I mean, Donald Trump's election campaign tried and tried again in court. 60 court appearances, they couldn't prove any impropriety in the election. One of the arguments, and it could be a legit argument for anybody, is the federalizing of elections. That is, the federal government would be dictating to states how elections are run. They would be telling states, you can do this, you can't do that, that kind of thing. And, I mean, that's an argument to be made. People can argue from the perspective of states should continue to have the ability to control their elections as they do right now. As it stands right now, states come up with their own election protocols. They allow, disallow things. And the problem is, if you are a Democrat voter in a red state, you're stuck with the hurdles they're going to put in front of you to try and keep you from voting. And this would also, as I said, require super PACs to disclose ID of their big donors. It would start a public financing system for House candidates. I've been a supporter for many years now of political campaigns should be publicly funded. Everybody should be given the same amount of money, and they run their campaign however they run it. We shouldn't have any of this. If you get more billionaires and more corporations putting more money into your campaign, you run more TV ads, more YouTube ads, more everything, radio ads. You have more money to travel around the country and talk to people. Everybody should have the same amount of money. That's the way we would prevent politics from being a game for the rich. Because right now, as it stands, politics is a game for the rich. Why do we have so many people in politics that come from wealthy, prominent families? Because you have to come from that type of family in order to be in politics. Just the way it is. I mean, you got to have money. And you've got to have prominence. All of these things will help you in politics. But there are people who come from poorer backgrounds that manage to get elected into elected office. Very rare. This would set new codes of conduct for the Supreme Court and Congress. And I don't know that we need new codes of conduct. We just need people to follow the codes of conduct that exist. Lawrence Lessig of Harvard and Rick Hassan of UCLA Irvine had commented of H.R. 1 accepting anything short of total victory is bad policy and bad politics. What they're talking about there is, for the Democrats, H.R. 1 would definitely allow them to win more political contests because more people would have the ease of access to voting, and that's what Democrats need to win, is for more people to show up and vote. Republicans, on the other hand, they need fewer people to show up and vote, and that's why they're arguing the perspective they are, that this shouldn't pass. It's bad politics because if Democrats do not ensure this bill passes, they are ensuring they will lose some races they could have won in the future. Just the way it is. I mean, you have states like North Carolina where you have a majority of Republicans representing the House from the state, even though Democrats handily won as far as the total votes for the House in the state. There were way more Democrat voters that voted, but Republicans won like 2/3 of the seats. Insanity. And that's because of the gerrymandering. I mean, gerrymandering is wrong, whether Republicans do it, whether Democrats do it. Right now, Republicans have been doing it hardcore for a long time because there was a point where you had the two Koch brothers that were heavily funding the Republican politicians. They had made a decision that we should focus on local and state elections. Republicans have a better chance of winning those if they have a lot of financial backing. Once they get control of local and states, the local cities, municipalities, and then the broader states, then they can gerrymander and make sure they get more people in Washington. That was a long game strategy from back in the 90s of the Koch brothers. And it's been paying off through the entire 2000s, their strategy. And for the Democrats, they've got to either alter the filibuster, which they've talked about. Joe Biden said he wanted to go back to a talking filibuster, which it would require, if you're going to filibuster, you've got to get up and stand up and talk nonstop, wear your adult diapers or whatever you're going to do. I mean, there are a lot of old people in Congress. They may be wearing adult diapers anyway. But in the Senate, you've got Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema from Manchin from West Virginia, Kyrsten Sinema from Arizona. Both have said they were absolutely opposed to doing away with filibuster. Joe Manchin had suggested he might be willing to alter it to make the filibuster more painful. But I don't know that I trust him. We'll see. But Democrats have got to do something in order to try and get this bill passed. And there is some information this is from the League of Women Voters website, talking about H.R. 1, what it would do. It would bring automatic and same-day voter registration to voters across the country. Automatic voter registration is a transformative reform under which eligible voters are automatically registered when they provide information to the government at the DMV or other government agencies unless they opt out. Since 2015, 15 states and the District of Columbia have approved automatic voter registration. If adopted nationwide, AVR could add as many as 50 million new voters to the rolls. Same-day registration allows eligible voters to register at the polls on Election Day, making it less likely that voters will be disenfranchised by last-minute registration problems. It is already offered in 16 states. Combined with AVR, SDR would solve most of the serious registration problems voters experienced in 2016 and 2018. And the same-day voter registration, I would say, is very, very important, because you have one of the tactics Republicans are using to try and prevent people from voting is to purge voter rolls. And people do not necessarily get notified or understand the notice. When they get notified they were purged, then they show up to vote. They're not registered. There's no same-day voter registration in their state because it's a red state, and they're just not able to vote. And that's one of the problems. People show up to vote. They've been purged from the rolls. They can't vote. Same-day voter registration is a huge deal. And H.R. 1 reaffirms Congress's commitment to restore the full protections of the 1965 Voting Rights Act, the landmark civil rights law that was hobbled by the Supreme Court's 2013 Shelby County decision. Shelby County enabled states to pass a wave of restrictive voting measures that set the stage for the brazen attempts at voter suppression we saw in 2018. The bill makes clear that Congress is committed to reversing the effects of the Supreme Court's decision. For that one, they would have to make sure they worded the law to where it was legal to get around the Supreme Court just blowing it up again. Nationwide early voting. H.R. 1 would also ensure that all voters have at least 2 weeks of early voting, including evening and weekend hours. Early voting, which is offered in most but not all states, boosts turnout for those who may have difficulty getting to the polls, such as working Americans and those providing child care, and reduces long lines on Election Day. It also provides an important protection for election integrity by allowing officials to spot and address problems well in advance of Election Day. Early voting is extremely popular with voters and helpful in fueling record-breaking turnout in 2018. Early voting, weekend voting, that's the thing. If there's an election coming up, and I have no problem with that, 2 weeks before the election, every state you're able to vote. All the polls are open in every state. They're open Monday through Friday. They're open Saturday and Sunday. I mean, as I mentioned in a previous video, for whatever reason, the black community tends to vote heavily on Sunday, certainly more than other demographics within the country, whether that's a matter of they go to church, then after church they go vote, or they go to church, the minister at church reminds them to vote, so they go vote, whatever it is. And you have some states trying to eliminate Sunday voting. Why? Because there's a large number of black folks who vote on Sundays, and they're trying to keep them from voting in the guise of it's going to make the election more secure somehow if you're not able to vote on Sunday. H.R. 1 would create a small donor matching system for congressional races and revamp the matching system for presidential contests. Small donor matching is an innovative reform that uses public funds to amplify small private donations. The bill would provide qualified presidential and congressional candidates with $6 in public funds for every $1 raised from small donors. A similar program has existed for decades in New York City, where it has diversified the donor pool, helped candidates of modest means run for office, and allowed elected officials to spend more time talking to their constituents instead of dialing for dollars. The bill also increases presidential public financing for general elections. Again, an important aspect of the bill, because we need to have anyone who wants to run to be in public service should have the ability to run. As it stands, for most of America, if you're not wealthy, well-connected, you don't have a chance of running. New York, as it said, had that matching small donor aspect, so you have people like AOC, who was able to run in New York and get elected to Congress and now stay 10-term incumbent. H.R. 1 also includes strong measures to close loopholes in federal campaign disclosure rules, curbs foreign funds in U.S. elections, and fixes the Federal Election Commission, our nation's dysfunctional campaign finance regulator. H.R. 1 would curb extreme partisan gerrymandering by ensuring that states draw congressional districts using independent redistricting commissions whose members represent diverse communities across the state, by establishing fair redistricting criteria and by mandating greater transparency for the redistricting process. H.R. 1 also contains a number of provisions to improve election security, including a requirement that states replace paperless voting machines, new grants to help states enhance election security on an ongoing basis and develop better processes for auditing disputed election results, and new security requirements for election system vendors, including an obligation to report cybersecurity breaches. And that's what Republicans are arguing that they're all about. Election security. It's in the bill, and they're like, no, it allows more people to vote. That's all they care about. That's all they care about. H.R. 1 shores up government ethics by strengthening enforcement of ethics rules in the executive branch, requiring disclosure of presidential tax returns, tightening restrictions on congressional conflicts of interest, and requiring the Supreme Court to adopt a code of ethics. In addition, the bill also prevents the purging of voter rolls based on eliminating the voter registrations of voters who have failed to vote in recent elections, which is also a common trick of Republicans, just purging the voter rolls. H.R. 1 would be great if it passes. Right now, it has zero chance of passing. It will not pass. It would need to be a 60-vote filibuster-proof majority in the Senate. That's not going to happen. They can, as I said, try and take pieces out of the bill that Republicans would support. If there are any provisions in the bill Republicans would support. And there's always a chance Republicans, if Democrats tried to go that route to negotiate with Republicans, there's always a chance they would say, okay, well, blow up this H.R. 1 bill, and let's just put together a bill that includes the provisions we agree on. And then Democrats get that put together, pass it in the House, vote it on the Senate, and then the Republicans are like, no, we're not voting for that either. There's always a chance they would play that game. Mitch McConnell has done that before. But, again, if you care, you can always call your representative, you can call your senator, and let them know how you feel. If you feel like people should have more access to voting, then by all means, let them know. And again, thanks for watching my video. Have a good day.